by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, not that you can today. Please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. Just to remind members wishing to speak, you simply press the talk button on the unit in front of you and I will activate your microphone once I call you to speak. I will also turn off your microphone once you have finished speaking. Moving to agenda item 1 of this council meeting, declarations of interest. Members, if you have any disclosable pecuniary interests or personal and prejudicial interests to declare in relation to the items on the agenda before us, please can you indicate? We'll go to agenda item 2 then. Minutes of council meeting held on 17th of October 2023. Is it proposed by Councillor Steve Pitt and seconded by Councillor Simon Bowsher that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 17th of October previously circulated be confirmed as a correct record?
So proposed, Lord Mayor.
So seconded, Lord Mayor.
Are the minutes agreed? Communications. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Charlotte Gerarda, Councillor Lee Hunt, and Councillor Daniel Weems, and have also received apologies for lateness from Councillor John Smith, who will be running about 20 minutes late. I'd also like to mention... Sorry, Councillor Pitt.
No, that's okay. Lord Mayor, just to inform members that should the meeting go on into the later hours of the day, I may need to leave to attend other public sector business.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Councillor Atkins.
Yes, similarly I need to leave earlier by about 6 o'clock, so if the meeting is still going, I'll need to go.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Same for me, I'll need to leave about 5:15 for childcare. Thank you.
Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Lord Mayor, I won't have to leave for childcare. But Lord Mayor, I hope it's all right to crave your indulgence. Yesterday evening there was an award ceremony for ports. It's the Wave Awards, which is kind of like the Oscars for all the ports. And Portsmouth International Port won 2 awards. The award for being the best port, and this is the cruise industry, which I think is really, really good, and also the best environmental innovation. And that was for all the solar panel work and trying to make sure that the passenger terminal is carbon neutral, etc. And I'd hope that all of us would wish to send our congratulations to the team at the port for their hard work.
Absolutely, with brilliant news. Thank you, Councillor Vernon Jackson. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor George Madwick gives his apologies. He will be running late also.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillors Brent, do you have anything to declare in today's meeting?
No declaration. Apologies for being late.
I'll forgive you. So yeah, I would like... Are you indicating again, Gerald?
Can I ask, I'm terribly sorry, I've only just arrived back from New Zealand this morning, so I've not caught up with everything. But in Notice of Motion A, it mentions Portico, for which I'm a council-appointed director. Peter, does that exclude me from this? I don't think it does, but I just think in terms of being upfront about things, I need to make sure that I've declared that I am a council-appointed director.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Councillor Vernon Jackson. So I'd just like to mention 2 causes for celebration today. Firstly, to congratulate King Charles on his 75th birthday. And secondly, to congratulate Councillor Charlotte Gerarda on the birth of her baby, Ariana, who was born yesterday at 0340 and weighed £6.6. I'm sure members will join me in congratulating her and Aaron. That's why she's not here. It is a good excuse. I'll allow it. Moving to agenda item 4, deputations from the public under Standing Order 24.
My Lord Mayor, there are 4 deputations for the meeting, details of which have been circulated on the green sheets. Can I ask Robert New to make your deputation in support of item 8C, Portsmouth City Council's support for improvement of women and girls sports in Portsmouth. You have 6 minutes in which to deliver your deputation. The bell will sound when there is 1 minute to go, and again at the end of your time. Thank you, Mr. New.
Thank you, Peter, and it's nice to be back, but from the other side, and the warm reception that I've had from members across the board as well has been really particularly lovely. And following yesterday's events, maybe I could start by injecting some humour in today's meeting and say maybe like, you know, what was it they said yesterday in the paper? Daddy's home. I'm only joking. It's nice to be able to come back and address members, especially some of these motions here today are really, really good. And so it's nice to be able to come here and support these. And specifically, just to really talk on the importance, I think, of inclusivity and actually looking to improve engagement for women and girls in local sports. And so the motion is fantastic. I will not go over lots of the details that are included in here, and I think it's been very eloquently put by the members presenting and seconding the motion. But I just kind of wanted to talk from my own point of view and about how a middle-aged man came to love quite a good sport, which is an ocean-based sport, surfing, and just to talk about really how I've seen Surf England bring women and girls into the fold, and how they've created role models that are inspiring people across the country, especially in coastal communities like ours. And when you have people that inspire people, you have people that want to engage in the sports, people that before that perhaps never felt like that it would be something that they could try. And I think that's really exciting. And specifically, some of the stars of the future, which we're going to hear a lot about, I think, in the lead up to the next Olympics, are people like Alice Barton, Victoria Farmer, Charlotte Mully, Lauren Sandland, Lucy Campbell, and Emily Curry. They are the girls that make up the UK's very first surf Olympic squad. Never before have we had that. Portsmouth, unfortunately, not having any surf breaks here. Is lagging behind. However, I know that the editor of the Portsmouth News is a huge fan and also surfs, and perhaps there is some room to completely obliterate one of your future capital budgets and to build a nice surf break here at some point. I jest on that, but it would be wonderful. But it really sticks to the point of, like, I've seen the work that's gone on with the Surf England squad. They weren't actually looking to be able to present this squad until 2032. That they're going to be able to do it for 2028 is incredible. And that is in part because of the take-up, the inspiration of young girls and women across the country, from Scotland right the way down to Cornwall, taking up this sport, getting involved, wanting to feel that rush of riding a wave, which there is nothing like it. And that's also true of whether it's netball, football, etc., which we do so well in this city. And I've had the privilege of attending, along with Claire Martin from Pompey and the Community, some of the events that have been organised around women's and girls' football here in the city. And again, it's been fantastic to see, and I was lucky enough a couple of years ago to make a short film with them. And just seeing the work that went into there and that they could do it as well as the boys, and sometimes with a little bit more style and pizzazz, dare I say. You know, it's great to see. So I think that this is a great motion. I just wanted to come here and really just to support it, but also just to say there is a lot going on. We could do more. And actually, I would just also like to pay credit to the council. I think that they do a huge amount to support these things. They are obviously seen as luxuries rather than statutory. I think so. The fact that people across this chamber, across the civic offices, do invest their time, effort into it. I think that we're on the right course, and I think that the future's exciting, and I hope that the motion will pass today.
Thank you. Can I ask Robert New to make your deputation in support of item 8D, supporting local producers? You have up to 6 minutes in which to deliver your deputation. The bell will sound when it is 1 minute to go, and again at the end of your time. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, again, on this motion, I just wanted to come along and pay my support. My superb colleague, Ben, Councillor Ben Swan, I think that we're lucky here in the City Council to have such a huge champion of farmers, local producers, whether that's farm-based, marine-based, you know, our fisheries, etc., and also of actual produce, etc., which will obviously hopefully be news to the very positive news to the ears of our vegan and veggie friends as well. And I think what's important is that in this day and age, and with so many opportunities yet to be seized, especially after having left the European Union, there's a hell of a lot more that we can do to support our local producers. And maybe that can start with us. And I was kind of inspired a little bit by the work that the officers did back when I was the Cabinet Member for Environment and Community Safety, when we were looking at better ways of reducing single-use plastic in the council, which I know Kimberly and Dave before her have carried on and you know, done even more. And I thought, well, actually, you know, we did such a good job on achieving our aims across the council for that. This motion coming forward to be able to support our local producers, farmers who work so hard, you know, our fisheries, etc. There is so much that I think that we could do, perhaps in a small way, to be able to support them. And so I was really pleased, and I know the passion that is behind Councillor Swan's wanting to bring this motion here as well. And so I really applaud that, and I'm sure that many of the members here in this chamber will share those views. And I always think that as a city, while we're an island city and we're very unique, we are surrounded 10 minutes out by some of the most fantastic farms, farm shops, producers, you know, people who produce really bespoke, high-end produce off of the South Downs, the land here, that it could only be a good thing. And so, again, just wanted to come here really to pay my support, and also hoping that the motion will pass unanimously, and that, again, it's another positive story to come out of this chamber today. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Sharon Holland to make your deputation in support of item 8E, Chloe's motion? You have up to 6 minutes in which to deliver your deputation. The bell will sound when there is 1 minute to go, and at the end, again at the end of your time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Holland. I am the mum of Chloe, who this motion is about. On the 1st of February, I was told I needed to contact the hospital as something had happened to my daughter Chloe. The doctor told me to get to the hospital as soon as possible, as Chloe had tried to take her own life by hanging herself. To this day, I still can't get these awful words out of my head. I got to the hospital to be met by the doctor and the police. There it was explained to me what had happened and how Chloe's heart had stopped and her brain had been starved of oxygen for maybe 20 minutes. We were very lucky a PCSO that found her was a full-time paramedic. When I went to see Chloe, I was horrified by how she looked. She was attached to a ventilator and loads of other machines. She was still there, breathing, although unconscious. But my other kids were distraught after seeing her. I couldn't cry or shout out, "Why is this happening to me?" as I was numb and in shock. What followed the next day was an honest chat with the consultant at what could happen for Chloe. I asked him to be honest with me, as I didn't want to be given hope when there was no hope. He was honest and said it's very rare anyone comes back from this, so I knew I was going to lose my daughter from that day forward. We went through weeks of being on a roller coaster, looking for every sign as a positive one, which it wasn't. After speaking to the consultant, we spoke to the police and were told the full extent of how bad it had been for my daughter with Masterton, and how Chloe had made a 2-hour video statement. Excuse me. I was mortified how bad it had been, but my daughter had been so brave coming forward, and I never knew everything, as she never told me. I realised how he had manipulated not only Chloe, but my family also. After weeks of tests at the hospital, we were finally told there was no hope of Chloe recovering, so I made this decision for Chloe to go to palliative care. It took Chloe 9 days to die, and it was the most traumatic thing I have ever witnessed. I was thankfully there when she took her last breath, as I was worried she would be frightened dying alone. Chloe died on the 6th of March, and my heart broke. Chloe turned 23 in the hospital, and I took her little boy to see her just before we lost her. Masterton was arrested, charged, and sent to prison on remand. The trial was set for the 16th of August, as Masterton pleaded not guilty. After months of anxiety leading up to court, he entered an early plea 2 days before the trial to coercive and controlling behaviour, but not to the 4 assaults. Because coercive and controlling behaviour is such a hard charge to prove, I accepted the deal. The policeman Nicky Brogan worked so hard to make sure Masterton was held accountable and even tried for the Suicide Act charge. And when that failed, the manslaughter charge, to be told legislation needed to be changed to charge with these offences. Masterton's sentencing came on the October the 6th. We heard how he'd done his courses in prison and a letter of remorse was read out, how he loved my daughter and still did. All the while he was smiling through all of this. 15% was taken off his sentence and he was praised for entering an early plea. 3 years, 9 months was all he was given for causing my beautiful daughter to take her life and put her through 12 months of living fear and absolutely terrified of what he may do. Hitting her so she couldn't see her son because her face would be bruised. Legislation must be changed so these monsters are held accountable for destroying a young girl's life and putting her through the most horrendous abuse. Victims and their families deserve more justice than just a pathetic few years, as he will only serve half, and our nightmare and trauma will continue. I will one day have to explain to her little boy what's happened. I have lost my daughter, my kids have lost their sister, and my grandson, who's only 4, has lost his mum. This year, an inquest ruled unlawful killing for Kelly Sutton, who took her own life due to domestic abuse. For 6 years, her mum has fought for this with her solicitor. It will take another 2 years to prove manslaughter. It shouldn't take years to get justice to hold these monsters responsible for someone's death. It should be done straight away when charged with coercing and controlling behaviour. I'm asking you to help me achieve this in asking for legislation to be changed. It will show these perpetrators it is not acceptable to treat victims this way and cause them to feel so bad they take their own life, as there's no other way out of these relationships and no escape from mental torture. We as a family can't grieve until this is all over. A domestic homicide review is ongoing, and we cannot have the inquest until this is finished. If the inquest rules suicide without taking everything into account, it will take years to wait for a second inquest to be done. I ask you to please help my family not to have to wait so long for justice and let us finally grieve. There isn't a day that goes past that I don't think of Chloe and how much I miss her. My heart is broken and all I want is Masterton to receive the justice we so desperately want. No amount of years will bring her back, but it could ease the thought that he has gotten away with contributing to my daughter's death. I have set up a government petition to gain signatures to change legislation. Thank you for allowing me to tell you the story of my daughter Chloe. Yeah, I've got one, thank you. I'm all right.
Thank you, Mrs Holland. Can I ask you now to retire to the public gallery if you wish to watch the rest of the proceedings? Can I ask Robert New to make your deputation in support of item 8F, FFC Pathfinder? You have up to 6 minutes in which to deliver your deputation. The bell will sound when there is 1 minute to go, and again at the end of your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I just wanted to come today, members, just to talk in support of the motion that's before us with regards to funding, etc. And it's one of the things I just really wanted to say, that I think the council does quite well sometimes, but I know that with things being overstretched often, well, I know this personally, you can't do everything all the time, but I think that on some things, maybe we can look to do things better. And I say that from a point of view of knowing that there are finite resources and that outside organisations who deliver some of the fantastic services, especially people like the Roberts Centre and Carol Damper, for example. And I'd just like to really raise the point of that they've been working around gaining some funding to do with the RAISE project, which is intended to support young children and families, etc., and hopefully to reduce the burden on the local authority, especially the budgets, etc., that come with having increased numbers of looked after children. And we'll all be aware that we've seen an increase in that over the years. And while mostly there's not a lot that we can do about that, because you never know what you're going to have from one year to the next, the work that the Roberts Centre does is exceptional, in my opinion. And I know that many of you here will probably share that view. Some of you have worked directly with them and continue to do so. I was disappointed to hear that there was an opportunity that officers missed, that they didn't apply for some funding that was available, and which has caused great heartache and within certain organisations. And so I just really wanted to talk about some of the benefits that could have provided. So they were looking to do a review of the RAISE project, which would have looked to have reduced the burden on the local authority in terms of looked after children in our care, and therefore also the pressures on the budget. And some of the benefits, had the council, I understand, bid for that funding, would have led to this. A successful pilot could have been trialled here or elsewhere once evaluation was complete. Reduction in the number of looked after children, which has increased, I understand, around 10% in the last 5 years. Reduction in pressures of local authority budgets. Remove risk of removal, which has been shown to be harmful to not only children but also their families. Improve the life chances of children, young people and their families who are at the risk of removal, i.e. attainment, education, employment and broader support. And also take the pressure off of fostering and adoption lists. So those were just some of the things that I thought was important to raise today. And this isn't an attack in any form, I would just add as well, because like I say, I've seen the power of good that the council can do when they work together across the board with external organisations. And I think probably the levelling up funding from I think it was 2022 November is probably a key point in that, and which also leads on to perhaps the award that we won yesterday, and that Councillor Vernon Jackson told us about, directly linked to the port and the cruise terminal, and I think that that's a really wonderful thing. And again, I do recognise the problem that we do have with finite resources, but when I think it comes to children, families, especially those that I've had a crap start in life, to be frank with you, and you'd expect nothing less from me. I think that where we can help them, we should do all we can to help them. And it's really heartening to know that there are organisations, people like Carol, who really, really, they live and breathe this. They want people to have the best outcomes in life. They really do care, as I know all of you do as well, members. And so I'm here to support the motion. I hope that all of you will also, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you, Robert. Can I please now ask you to retire to the public gallery if you wish to watch the remaining proceedings? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. That brings us to the end of deputations for this meeting. Councillor Smith, do you have anything to declare for this meeting?
No, apologies for being late, Lord Mayor, but no, nothing to declare.
Thank you, Councillor. I was made aware. Thank you. Agenda item 5, questions from the public under Standing Order 25. No questions from the public have been received under the provisions of this standing order. Moving to agenda item 6, appointments. I'm not aware of any appointments to be made at this meeting. Agenda item 7, urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business for this meeting. So we go to agenda item 8, notices of motion. We have 6 notices of motion before us today. As you are aware, all notices of motion on the agenda will be automatically dealt with at this meeting if duly proposed and seconded. Is motion A, Portsmouth City Council support for the real living wage, proposed by Councillor George Fielding and seconded by Councillor Mary Vallely. Councillor Fielding.
Formally proposed, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Vallely.
Seconded.
Thank you. I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Fielding, to present and speak to his motion. Councillor Fielding, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. As Living Wage Week draws to a close, we take this opportunity to acknowledge the work that the Living Wage Foundation does to promote and accredit those employers across the country that pay the real living wage to its employees. As of today, more than 14,000 employers up and down the country are accredited as living wage employers, including the city's own commercial arm of the international port, Portico, which accredited back in August this year. By signing up as an accredited employer, it offers that reassurance and security to workers to receive at least the real living wage of currently £12 per hour outside of London. And why pay a real living wage? To give remuneration for a standard work week that is sufficient to afford a decent standard of living for a worker and their family. It should be enough to provide for all basic needs, along with a discretionary income and provision to cover for unexpected events. Today, as the cost of living crisis continues to bite hard for hard-working people across Portsmouth, it is important that we take time to thank all workers in the city and put this matter back on the agenda for consideration by Employment Committee. It has been suggested in a recent study published by the UNSW Business School that some of the effects of paying a real living wage include growing consumer markets due to the increased income spent in the local economy, as well as increasing engagement and productivity of workers. This also has the effect of reduced turnover of workers and increasing retention, which in turn reduces the associated recruitment and training costs. Full Council has previously received warm words from the former leader of the City Council, and indeed Councillor Vernon Jackson went as far as to say that the living wage accreditation, all parties think this is the right thing to do and want to move forward to make sure this thing happens. Portsmouth City Council already pays its directly employed workers the real living wage since the 2018 agreement on this, and it is important that it now continues the work to expand this out to all contracted workers, especially those workers employed in the social care sector. So what we are asking in this motion is to consider re-establishing the work undertaken by Employment Committee to establish a plan for the administration to pay all contracted out workers the real living wage, which will enable the Council to be able to apply for accreditation as a living wage employer, joining over 150 local authorities, including the local Lib Dem-controlled Eastleigh Borough Council, but also to celebrate that Portsmouth City Council already commits to paying its directly employed workers the real living wage, whilst acknowledging there is still some work to be done in order to achieve accreditation status. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. I have one amendment before me in the name proposed by Councillor Simon Bosher. Is that proposed by you, Councillor Bosher?
Probably proposed, Lord Mayor.
And seconded by Councillor Gosling.
Seconded.
Are you happy for that to be circulated while you speak? Councillor Bosher.
Thank you very much. You better have a copy of my amendment. Thank you. From the outset, I would say that we on this side of the chamber are not disagreeing with what Councillor Fielding has actually put down. But I think there needs to be some context that is added to the notice of motion. And to that end, I've proposed 2 additional points that I think need to be taken into consideration by this chamber about the implications of what we're actually looking to do. And the first is to note that the Employment Committee report from November 2022, to which Councillor Fielding refers to, it carries two quite important points in that particular report. 3.3 of that report, I sat on that committee, I sat on that working group, and I would pay thanks to all the staff that spent a year of research to produce the report before it actually got to us in November 2022. And 3.3 says, in order to become an accredited living wage employer, sustainable funds need to be identified through the budget process. It also states in the financial comments, which I've outlined in the first point there, this council notes that the Employment Committee report of the 17th of November 2022, to which I've just referred, at any point the decision is taken to implement the real living wage, the City Council will simultaneously need to identify and approve savings of £1.978 million in order to fund this policy initiative. That was as of November 2022. So had the Cabinet decided to do that in the budget process, we would have had to have found another £2 million worth of savings at that point. I've also added a point going forward that adult social care is currently £2.8 million overspent, Councillor Fielding, and that should any decision be taken to implement the real living wage, the City Council will simultaneously need to identify and approve further savings of 3.6 million, so it's gone up from 1.978 to 3.6 million to enable this policy initiative, on top of the £2.8 million worth of savings to adult social care. Now, I'd hasten to add that that 3.6 million is only adult social care. It doesn't include anything else. So in order to do this, to put some context, and I appreciate what the Labour Party is trying to do, but you're going to need to find service cuts in the budget process as part of the Labour amendment in order to achieve this, of something in the thick end of £6.5 million. And I think there needs to be an element of context around what you're seeking to do. So what I've put forward down here as an amendment is for the benefit of the paperwork going forward to demonstrate that there is a consequence to service cuts by what you are looking to achieve of £6.5 million at this moment in time today. That doesn't mean next February, where it could be significantly worse, depending on how the overspend of adult social services is. So I'm not seeking to change anything of what you're doing. I wonder whether going back to the Employment Committee to do this yet again is the right course of action, bearing in mind it took the best part of a year otherwise. But I think you need to be honest with people in the fact that what you are seeking to do is going to have that particular impact of somewhere probably close to £7 million worth of cuts that you're going to have to find as part of your amendment process for the budget in 2023, 24. And I look forward to seeing that actually when it comes forward in February. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bosher. The matter is now before Council to debate. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The Administration supports this motion and the Conservative amendment. Many of the motion's arguments aren't new. Indeed, they are why this Lib Dem administration is proud to have delivered a real living wage for council employees not once, but twice. And as someone who's been on the Employment Committee for more than 9 years, I want to build on my fellow committee veteran, Councillor Bosher's speech. Now, the good news is that we're a long way from the dark days, when the Conservatives and their Labour and UKIP allies oversaw the poorest paid in this council getting their wages frozen, whilst richer ones got a pay rise. We ended that fast when we came back, and I'm delighted that all groups, including Conservative and Labour groups, now agree that the real living wage is something we should try to deliver to everyone, not just our employees. As Councillor Bosher has said, it's been a year since the committee has last discussed this matter, and we're actually going to get an update from officers on this position at our meeting later this month. Now, the committee, then run by Labour and the Conservatives, when it last discussed this, we all agreed various points, and I just wanted to remind colleagues what they were. The first one was that paying the real living wage for everyone is the right thing to do. Secondly, my Lord Mayor, there was doubt amongst all committee members about how easy it would be to find the funding. Thirdly, doing it had to be sustainable, as something that would only last a year would damage worker morale. 4, to ask the Cabinet to consider including real living wage accreditation in the upcoming budget setting process to seek sustainable funding. And 5, asking the Cabinet to look at the budget setting process so that we could try and include the real living wage in our final budget. So what Labour proposes today, aside from asking the Council to publicise an event that's happened, is basically what we all agreed on the Employment Committee a year ago. We as an administration supported it then, and we support it now. And as an administration, where we can do it, we do. The motion recognises Portico for doing it. The housing revenue I oversee is all but doing it. So the issue isn't will, but it is, as Councillor Bosher has outlined, cost. And the cost for all of us. Cabinet did do what was recommended and looked at bringing this in for other contractors. But the hard problem, as Councillor Bosher has outlined, is that cost, especially for adult social care. Something Councillor Fielding, our friends in Eastleigh, do not have to worry about. Now, deep down, we all know the cost problems are true. After all, we did not include the real living wage in the cross-party budget we all agreed to back in February. And the main reason for that cost, again, as Councillor Bosher has outlined, is the adult social care system. Now, again, the committee, led by Councillor Corkery, has looked at the costs previously, and we have found that there are real faults within the system. Now, that's not our fault, because every politician in this room knows it needs fixing by government. All of our parties nationally have run away from doing so. The fear of the Labour death tax or the Tory dementia tax has left deep, deep wounds in national parties, and they're too scared, frankly, to go back there again because they fear what might happen. They fear the political consequences. But that has real consequences for us, and it has real consequences for those workers involved with us. In our city, the position is clear. Care providers like the real living wage, but only half pay either it or a wage level above it. Most who don't pay the real living wage say that if they did, they would charge not the people in their care, but the council, us. Hence the multi-million-pound cost that has been outlined in the Conservative motion. Now, those problems were there last year, and officers tell us that they haven't gone away in the intervening 12 months. Indeed, on top of what Councillor Bosher has added, there's probably another £2 million to add that we have to find year on year for funding the local government pay package for employers. So if we're to achieve a real living wage for everyone involved in this council, as we all want to do, we have to fix social care, or rather our national parties have to fix social care. And that means them showing a bravery that we might be able to pursue, but they clearly do not. So we have to be prudent on pay. We want the real living wage, but we have to be prudent. Labour Birmingham's decades of sexism on pay have brought it to bankruptcy. Not here. We will not let our residents down in that way. That is why the principles the committee established last year still stand, and why we as Liberal Democrats not only welcome and back the motion from Councillor Fielding and Councillor Vallely, we also back the Conservative amendment too. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. I have no other speakers indicating. Oh, it's always you, Gerald. Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I think it's a very useful motion. I think we've come a long way on this. This was a really contentious subject in previous years. And it's good to see that we have made such significant progress, but I think there are things that we need to remember about where we've been in the past and learn from them. Darren has covered, Councillor Sanders has covered a lot of it, but I just want to emphasise one or two bits and pieces where I think we are, I hope, in the same place. In 2014, the previous Lib Dem administration brought in the real living wage for people employed by the City Council. When we lost power to the Conservatives supported by Labour and UKIP, one of the decisions of that administration was to not pay people the real living wage. And it went further than that, and I think it's one of the most disgraceful things that that administration did, that they chose, while everybody else was getting a pay rise, the people at the bottom of the pile who'd been uplifted from the national minimum wage to the real living wage, they had their pay frozen for 4 years. to try to push their pay back down to the level of the national minimum wage. Now, I think we're now all in agreement that that was the wrong thing to do, and that we wouldn't do it again. And I'm pleased that all parties are in that place. But we fought over those 4 years to defend people on the real living wage, and I'm disappointed at that time that we didn't have support from either the Conservatives or Labour councillors. So I think it's been a very positive thing that we've now got that support of having the real living wage, and I hope that we stick to it. I think the LGA pay awards are now reflecting that. So a lump sum to everybody means that we're addressing people on low wages and trying to push that up without always giving such a high percentage rise to people like Chris. Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry. So, okay, I should say to extremely well-paid council officers.
Can I ask you to withdraw that comment, please, Councillor Vernon Jackson?
Okay, for some senior. So the principle was that we'll have a flat rate. I think the second bit that I think is really important that we're going to do is, if you're going to give somebody the real living wage, don't take it away again. It has to be sustainable. In the Labour budget in 2022, there was funding to do this on a one-year basis to make sure that all the contractors working for adult social care, because that's predominantly where the money would go for, there would be funding to give them a one-year increase, but it was not sustainable. And I think that's probably the worst way of doing something. Particularly people on low wages, give them a one-year increase and then take it away again afterwards. And I think we've learned not to do that. So across party, we've said we want to find a sustainable solution. And the third bit I think that we've learned is that actually maybe we can do this. Simon is right to say, Councillor Bocher is right to say that there is a big financial cost to do this in adult social care. But I think if we are in a significantly better financial position than many other councils. Our savings target next year is 0. Southampton's savings target is 26 million. The target at Hampshire County Council is 82 million. So I think this is something that we can aim for if we all work together, but we're going to have to be realistic. It will mean big cuts to other services if this is what we want to do. But if this is the primary thing that we want to do across all parties, we probably could do it, but we need to do it with our eyes open. It needs to be in a sustainable way that we don't give it 1 year and take it away in future years. And I'm really pleased that it looks as if across the whole of the chamber, all parties are now agreed that this is an important thing to do. And I think that's enormous progress.
Thank you to Councillor Vernon Jackson. I'll put that lapse down to your no doubt jet lag, but I will not be so forgiving if it happens again. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, and I want to echo that it's surprising to see that after returning from what must have been a fabulous trip to New Zealand, I'm sure that the green-eyed monster of envy was directed towards our officers by Councillor Vernon Jackson. And so I'm sure that he will regret that comment when he thinks on it later. I also wanted to say that I felt it was rather unnecessary, indeed I said rather political point scoring of both Councillor Sanders and Councillor Vernon Jackson to take aim at the Conservatives on this issue when Councillor Boschner has proposed a sensible amendment that recognises the large financial cost imposed here, to then criticise the previous Conservative administration that during its tenure not only didn't raise council tax at all in line with national policy for a number of years, unlike the current administration who has raised it by the maximum amount possible every single year. They have been back in administration since 2018, raising millions of pounds of extra financing for the council. And so I do understand why Labour have brought this motion, because the administration keep claiming that they're committed to this issue and keep criticising the previous Conservative administration, who dealt with much more difficult financial circumstances, and yet haven't actually produced any further action on the issue than what was already accomplished. And so I can see why the issue keeps coming back to Council, because it is something which the administration keeps claiming commitment to, but actually doesn't choose to find the money for. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the wrong decision. I'm saying I think it was political point scoring to claim that somehow this is the Conservatives' fault, when clearly it is within the gift of the administration, who control the budget, who have raised council tax by a very substantial amount, who inherited a council in a strong financial position because of the very difficult decisions which were criticised by the two councillors who spoke before me, to then criticise that previous administration that raised money for the council, that found ways to make very difficult decisions in the budget that mean that we are in a position where we are not facing some of the cost savings of other councils. And so I think, I just wanted to say that I think that was unfair and unnecessary criticism on an issue when, as Councillor Evans-Jackson said, the parties appear to be in agreement, but it is the financial reality that it is a very difficult thing to achieve. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillor Pitt, I believe you have a point of order.
I've got a point of order, Gerald. Lord Mayor, thank you very much. 39B, I believe. I'm not aware, and perhaps the Director of Finance could confirm, that there were years where, and in fact I think multiple occasions we were told, where the Conservative-led administration between 2014 and 18 chose not to raise council tax. I believe that there were different restrictions in position at that time, and that they did raise council tax in line with the government advice at that time, bearing in mind that they were facing, as all local government was facing at the time, multi-million pound cuts to our budget.
I was just debating that with the city solicitor. It should have been 39A, because you haven't spoken yet. Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Councillor Adeniran.
Thank you, the Lord Mayor. I just wanted to add one of the benefits why we need to consider this motion. Living wage is the life wire of the community to reduce poverty and increase economic development. If a worker knows that his or her payments, her pay packet, support all his expenses, his or her productivity will increase and not likely to leave the employer. The stress of not being able to cater for basic needs can lead to illness or criminality. Portsmouth City Council should continue to support and encourage all employers of labour in the city to provide living wage to their employees. The benefits are many and obvious. It will certainly boost the economic prosperity of the city, reduce crime rates and fraudulent activities aimed at making ends meet. Tenant expulsion and homelessness will also be reduced. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adeniran. Councillor Evans-Jackson, do you have a point of order?
39B. Councillor Atkins said that when there was a change of administration, the Lib Dems didn't do anything. Actually, we did. We reinstituted the real living wage for all employees of the City Council. So I don't know if Councillor Atkins was unaware of that, but that is the fact.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon-Jackson. I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Fielding, to sum up and to confirm whether he wishes to subsume the amendment or not. Councillor Fielding.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Given due consideration to the amendment and happy to subsume it on the basis that it factually lays out the position as it would be for funding. Thank you for everyone who's contributed to the debate. I agree that we need to have a sustainable way of funding this and hope that we're able to move forward collectively on this. I think as one of the city's biggest employers, we would be sending the right message out to a number of big companies that would also make that change as well. So I think there is a strong case for it to be done, and hopefully we'll work with the administration to look for the necessary savings that we need to make in order to achieve this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. We will now move to the vote. So this is including the subsumed amendment. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That motion is carried. Moving on to motion B. Is motion B, Age-Friendly City Project, proposed by Councillor Graham Heaney and seconded by Councillor Yinka Adeniran? Councillor Heaney.
Yes, Lord Mayor, sorry, proposed in my name. Thank you.
Yinka?
Seconded, thank you.
I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Graham Heaney, to present and speak to the motion. Councillor Heaney.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I thought it might be helpful to start by just explaining a bit of the reasoning behind how and why this motion comes about, why it is on the order paper today. Back in the early part of October, the Portsmouth Pensioners Association invited group leaders to come and talk to them, and the invitation specifically asked the invitees to talk about what we thought we could do to make Portsmouth an age-friendly city. Now, I ended up substituting for my colleague, Councillor Gerardo, who was away at a conference, so I had a look at the invitation, and I decided to do a bit of research around the age-friendly project issue in order to get clear on what the background was. I've quoted a couple of documents in the motion, the original report from the World Health Organization, which recognised that the growing elderly population needed to be considered in relation to a whole range of issues around social as well as health care issues. And Age UK have been running a campaign around the similar issue to try and get communities and cities to sign up to becoming what we call age-friendly. Portsmouth Pensioners Association produced their own manifesto, which I have a copy here, talking about making Pompey an even more age-friendly place to live, which they presented to the City Council about a year or so ago. I looked at The Voice, which is the publication they produce twice a year, and the latest issue that I looked at, which was produced early springtime, had an article about this issue of the age-friendly city, and it quoted, and I put the quote in my motion, that the issue had been given to the city, the manifesto had been shared, but despite warm words from leading councillors, the initiative has stalled. So when the meeting took place, I talked a bit about this. I asked, said what I thought my view was, and I suggested that maybe one of the ways we could deal with this, to deal with the stalling, find out why it had stalled, what the problem was, would be to take it to a scrutiny management panel meeting. Councillor Pitt was sitting next to me, and he actually said at the time, yes, he thought that was potentially quite a good idea. Subsequently, it came to light that the Health and Wellbeing Board had actually received a report about this. But since neither Councillor Pitt nor I had attended that meeting, we had missed the report. But what was also interesting, I discovered, was that the Portsmouth Pensions Association also had no idea this report had been produced. So they were unaware that there was a report. So I went back and looked at it. And the report actually says that what it will do as next steps is basically engage in what can be described as an information gathering exercise. Now, doing a bit more research, I discovered that back in November 2021, Councillor Miller had produced a motion on social care, and she said the motion agrees to ask the Cabinet to work towards Portsmouth becoming recognised as an age-friendly city. So, after 2 years, we were at a position where we were engaging in an information gathering exercise. So there was obviously some disappointment among the Portsmouth pensioners. If you go back even further, there is a thing called a Portsmouth Ageing Population Strategy, 210 to 220. That was due to have a review in 2015 and an update, but that never happened. So in some ways, you can see why members of Portsmouth Pensions Association and all the people are beginning to wonder what is happening to the issues they're concerned with. They all seem to be getting stalled. They all seem to be getting left behind. And so that was really the reason that I put this motion forward. And I thought scrutiny management review would be a good way to have a quick review, offers brought in to explain what has happened, where we are, where we're going. So that was the original intention of the motion, and I was hoping that we would get some support. I am aware that an amendment will be coming to this motion, and I've had some discussions with the person proposing the amendment, and so I'm hoping we may be able to come to an agreement. But I do think, there was a genuine reason for bringing this forward. It wasn't just to cause a problem. I wasn't looking to score political points, but I was wanting to ask why, after 2 years, after an ageing population strategy, we seem to have made little, if any, progress on the issue. So I'm hoping that by the end of this debate we will be able to make some progress on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. You've ruined the surprise now. Are there any amendments to this motion? Councillor Whittington.
Amendment proposed in my name, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Is that seconded by Councillor Hugh Mason?
It is seconded, my Lord Mayor, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington, are you happy for that to be circulated while you speak?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Heaney. And as he's mentioned, this has been produced after discussion with him, which we obviously shared with my group and then finalised yesterday, to just put it into the context of where we are. And it does seem to be that there was a bit of a breakdown in communication, I think, across the board in terms of obviously this report went to the Health and Wellbeing Board at the end of September, on the 27th of September, about the next steps on the age-friendly city projects, and also in terms of the Portsmouth Pensioners Association not being updated on where we were there. We do have meetings with Andy Biddle, who's who produced the report for the Health and Wellbeing Board, and who is, of course, our Director of Adult Social Services. He went to see Pompey Pensioners earlier this year, and so we do have engagement with them. But I do agree, and you'll see in the amendments, there is about keeping the Pompey Pensioners Association informed and be involved in working forward on this. Just to give a bit of context on the work that we are doing across the piece here, and obviously this information gathering is very much about ensuring that all partners within the Health and Wellbeing Board are involved in this. And the reason why I put that in the amendments is, again, not getting any particular members of the board, but it's because we have an unusual Health and Wellbeing Board, because we have a Health and Wellbeing Board that is not just the traditional members of the Health and Wellbeing Board. We incorporate the Safety Portsmouth Partnership into our Health and Wellbeing Board, and the Children's Trust Board. Not many Health and Wellbeing Boards do this, so it does mean our membership is much broader than a lot of Health and Wellbeing Boards, and it does mean that we can look at things in a very much more holistic way. So, for example, having people like the police and indeed probation, but also the fire service involved in these kind of conversations is really important when we're talking about what we can do better for an age-friendly city. One of the other things that's been going on in the meantime, and so it's not quite a case of nothing's happened at all, but a lot of that work within the council has been going on. And one of the things we're finding more and more of is a lot of those things that particularly that are of particular interest and concern for older people are also things that have particular concern for a broader range of people as well. Often things, if we think of things like isolation and loneliness, for example, that is a really big issue with our older community in the city, my Lord Mayor. But it's also a concern for lots of people of all ages with mental health issues, for people who are in poverty, because they don't have the ability to go out and do things and socialise, and other groups as well. So one of the things that we will be pulling out, that have been pulled out on the internal look at this, is very much about how can we look at things that are, obviously some things are specific to older people, but a lot of the things that are coming out are also things that we can then move on in other contexts as well. So, as I say, I hope the amendment will be okay to subsume from the proposer, puts it in context, and I specifically put in there as well that we'll have a report back to the Health and Wellbeing Board by the end of this municipal year, which then gives time for that engagement from the outside, from the other organisations on the Health and Wellbeing Board, The Portsmouth Pensioners Association have their involvement as well. We know how well attended. If any of you have been to any of their meetings, you'll know that I think normally there's more than we are in this council chamber at their meetings. So they really do pat that out, and they really do represent a very broad spectrum of our older population in the city. And to be honest, it's a great resource that we can tap into. So this crystallises, as I say, I thank the motion for being brought, correcting some of the things to make sure that we are up to date with where we are, and look forward to some real movement forward on this in the next few months. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. The matter is now before the Council to debate, and first I have Councillor Judith Smythe. Judith Smythe, thank you.
My Lord Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. Such is the nature of Portsmouth that I met the chair of Portsmouth Pensioners Association when we were both buying a sandwich together in Osborne Road this morning. He had hoped to be here to do a deputation, but unfortunately they've had 2 deaths among the committee of PPA, which of course we're very sympathetic and sorry about, and running a smallish voluntary organisation without 2 of your chief officers is quite a challenge. So he's apologising for not having given a deputation, wanted me to say how grateful he was to the City Council for allowing use of council premises. They have their meetings in here, as those of us who have attended on various occasions will know, and they're very grateful for the good relationship they have. They were hoping to have Portsmouth named as an age-friendly city earlier, but that's been covered in the debate. And what he wanted to say, the most important thing he asked me to say on his behalf, was that he really does want to work with the council, with the health service, with the police, with all the other relevant agencies. And I think the health service comes up high on the list nowadays because of the difficulties there. That he very much wants to emphasise the fact that members who have a good deal of experience in these matters, as well as the lived experience of being over retirement age, would very much like to go on supporting the authority and its partners in making Portsmouth a really good and maybe the best place in the UK to grow old in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Next to indicate, I have Councillor Steve Pitt. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and it's only a small thing. Councillor Heaney referred to a meeting that we were both at. I had, as he said, not noted that particular item on the Health and Wellbeing Board agenda. It's my phone again, isn't it? Health and Wellbeing Board agenda, because I wasn't going to be at that particular meeting. I had read the papers, not made the link, but I had put out a blanket request across all directors at the City Council and said everything that feeds into this, I need it please, so I can report back properly to the Portsmouth Pensioners. I think Graham will remember that at the meeting I offered to give those gathered a précis of all of that information to update them on where we were, or I can answer the questions that have been raising during the meeting about a whole bunch of other things. And they said they would like me to answer the questions that they had about a whole bunch of other things. So that's why I didn't offer an update, but I did have information not related to the title of that, but to a whole raft of stuff that the City Council does do all the time to support older people.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Councillor Adeniran. I'll get your name pronounced right one of these days.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I'm here to support the motion. The initiative to create age-friendly communities is an essential step towards building inclusive societies that follow and support older individuals. The World Health Organization's Guide to Global Age-Friendly Cities, along with Age UK's Age-Friendly Communities Guide, defines these communities as places where age does not serve as a barrier to living well. It emphasizes the importance of providing an environment, activities, and services that enable older people to enjoy life, actively participate in society, and be valued for their contributions. In our very own city of Portsmouth, the Portsmouth Pensioner Association, PPA, has taken the initiative to manifest their vision of making our beloved city an even more age-friendly place to live. They have distributed a document outlining their local manifesto an action plan to achieve this goal. However, despite promising intentions of leading councillors, the age-friendly city project has unfortunately stalled. This is disheartening, considering the manifold benefits that an age-friendly city can provide. Such a project ensures that older individuals have the means to live well, feel safe, comfortable, and secure within their homes, access quality health care, and have financial security to support their needs. Additionally, an age-friendly city promotes social connections and opportunities for older individuals to actively engage in the community, fostering a sense of belonging. Together, as a community, we have the power to create an inclusive, supportive, and compassionate city that values the well-being and contributions of all its residents, regardless of age. Let us seize this opportunity to reignite the age-friendly city project and work towards making Portsmouth a shining example of an age-friendly community. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yinka. I have no one else indicating, so I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Graham Heaney, to sum up and ask whether he wishes to subsume the amendments. Councillor Heaney.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. A good short debate. Thank you very much indeed. I thank also Councillor Whittington for his cooperation. I think the amendment when it first came was a little bit bland, but I wanted to make sure that the Pensioners Association was formally consulted and it was actually in the motion so they don't get missed out. And I think the other thing was making sure we do get a proper report back, at least within a year, about progress. And hopefully also it will identify some of the reasons as to why, despite good intentions, some of the things that were proposed and happened that didn't happen. I think it's useful, some possible useful lessons to learn there. So on the basis of that, I'm very willing to accept the amendment. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Thank you, Councillor Heaney. So we will move to the vote. So this is on the motion, including the subsumed amendment. All those in favour? Anyone against? And anyone abstaining? The motion is carried. So we'll move on to motion C. Portsmouth City Council support for the improvement of women and girls sport in Portsmouth. Is this proposed by Councillor Mary Vallely and seconded by Councillor George Fielding? Councillor Vallely.
It is.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
Formally seconded and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. I now call upon the proposer, Councillor Mary Vallely, to present and speak to her motion. Councillor Vallely.
Lord Mayor, members and visitors. I've actually not going to make a speech because the motion says everything that we need to know. But I would like to welcome some amendments that are coming forward, Lord Mayor.
It's my line. It's in my script, Councillor Vallely. I've got James here saying, don't say there's an amendment, ask. Says, yeah, everyone's spoiling it for me. But are there any amendments? Councillor Steve Pitts, is this amendment proposed?
Well, I haven't seen what you've got in your hand, Lord Mayor, but I'm assuming so, yes.
And is that seconded by Councillor Oliver?
Sure is.
Councillor Pitt, are you happy for me for that to be circulated while you speak? Thank you. Councillor Pitt, if you'd like to present your amendment, please.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward amendment, Lord Mayor. It's really some suggested changes around some of the language because of the way in which we would interact with partners around the city. We don't have power to direct in many situations, but do have power to engage with and influence. So I've made some amendments around that in order to make that clear. I've widened out the scope of a few of the bits in there because there are other areas that are, when we're developing strategy, we need to be clear that we're looking at all underrepresented groups, and I thought that might be helpful because we have, for example, a playing pitch strategy that's coming up soon, and we've recently done our strategic update as well. So it's just around that. There was one particular paragraph that I think would have been a misunderstanding that I've removed, having clarified that with Councillor Vallely, so hopefully she's okay with that. But we didn't want to change the the intention of what's here. I chair the Sports Council. One of the individuals referred to here, in fact both the individuals referred to here, been to the Sports Council. Lizzie used to attend all the time, and Debbie came to the most recent one and talked about this very issue. She's regularly engaging with meetings with a council officer who's there to support the public health agenda with his secondment into culture and leisure, and he does meet with her on those occasions, and Debbie was also able to come along to the Sports Council and is now become a member of it, which is even more to be welcomed. So lots of good stuff that we can be doing. It is something that's on the radar, and it's just about, all I've done is made some tweaks to that. Hopefully the form of the language better suits how we would behave as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Are there any further amendments? The matter is now before Council for debate. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Interesting, actually, because I remember there was a motion last year by Councillor Brent put forward about women's sports, and I've also put a lot of questions forward. I'm in support of this motion, and I'm guessing the amendment too, as I know that this is something that Steve has been, Councillor Pitt, has been working quite a lot on. I hope it can be delivered, but also hope that it can also go the next step. You know, support young women, girls who are representing not only Portsmouth, but also the country as well, such as British wheelchair basketball players Maddie Martin, Jade Atkin, unbeaten featherweight box Ebony Jones, and shot put Serena Vincent, who won silver at the Under-23 European Championships. By supporting them, the aftercare will inspire women and girls to pursue sports and possibly careers. So I think this motion, as well as the motion last year, is fantastic, but we need to also have the next step, not just have the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Anyone else? Then I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Vallely, to sum up and ask whether she wishes the amendment to be subsumed. Councillor Vallely.
Lord Mayor and everyone, I'm delighted with the amendments, actually. It's a learning curve for me. And in summation, I'd just like you to support the amendment, please, and the motion.
You're subsuming the motion, amendment?
Yes, that one, what he said.
Thank you, Councillor Vallely. So we will, a vote will now be taken, including the subsumed amendment. All those in favour? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? The motion is carried. It's going a bit too well so far. We'll move on to motion D. Is motion D supporting local producers proposed by Councillor Benedict Swan and seconded by Councillor Lewis Gosling? Councillor Swan.
Proposal, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Gosling.
Happy to second.
I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Swan, to present and speak to his motion. Councillor Swan, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This motion commits us to promoting and, where possible, sourcing local food and drink, including meat, dairy, seafood and plant-based products for any events the Council may hold where this would be relevant. Our local area is full of great small businesses, restaurants and cafes, producers and, believe it or not, farming. Farlington Marshes represents a large proportion, around 125 hectares, of the remaining coastal grazing marsh found along the south coast. The continuing existence of which should fill us all with pride, especially as grazing is still going strong today. It certainly fills me with pride to see the ladies enjoying the grazing on the marshes. The northern boundaries of the city, on top of Portsdown Hill, also sit literally on the edge of fields utilised for both arable and dairy farming, with their produce finding its way into our city via small local run shops, selling fruits and vegetables, butchers, and I have to say Copner has a brilliant butcher, Astles, that sells amazing local meat, and I know the leader has a very popular Bransbury Park butcher in his ward, widely regarded as one of the best butchers in the city. We are also blessed with many amazing restaurants and cafes in our city who are champions of local produce. I know Councillor George Madgwick and his staff in particular champion local produce and seafood at his restaurant, and it's to his credit that he does so. We equally must also recognise the importance of fishing to the Portsmouth community and economy. Our local waters produce fresh seafood year-round, including mackerel, bass, flounder, carp and much, much more. And these catches are also sold at fishmongers within our city, such as Matt's Fishery in North End, Johnson's Fish in Hilsey, and of course Fish Portsmouth at the Camber Docks. Portsmouth also has numerous producers of top-class drink, from the Portsmouth Distillery at Fort Cumberland to the various micro and craft breweries that call Portsmouth home. Brewing has always been an industry with close ties to Portsmouth and surrounding areas, with such historically important breweries as Brickwoods here in the city and Gales in Horndean. We are also home to other small local producers such as Yardley, who produce excellent cordials and vinegars, and who are now known internationally, as well as being a personal favourite of His Majesty the King. And I know they have also sent a huge gift hamper to His Majesty for his birthday. Yardley's also produced a coronation cordial that was served at the coronation banquet at Buckingham Palace. And let's not forget the venerable local bakeries. I single out Beckeries in Copner as a fantastic example. Beckeries is family owned and run and makes and sells excellent cakes and savouries. And Rebecca and Liam and their family, who all work there, are lovely people to boot. I must admit to having a particular soft spot for bakeries, not just because of their role in helping me achieve my finely honed athletic physique, but also because my great-grandfather was a baker in Copner before the Great War and during the war. And when the men from the bakery went off to war, their wives stepped in and kept the bakery running so local people could still have the things they needed. Another part of this motion that is so important is that as part of tackling the environmental priorities for Portsmouth, it means we will consider ways to encourage residents, where possible, to shop locally, taking advantage of homegrown, affordable and nutritious produce, including meat, dairy, seafood and plant-based options, thus reducing food miles to our tables and boosting the local economy. A win-win situation. I'm so proud of the phenomenal quality of local produce we have on offer, and we should be promoting it as much as possible. That's why we should grasp the opportunity our cruise terminal gives us with both hands and allow local producers to highlight their products to a wide audience in that area. This would open up economic opportunities for the region as the port receives its expected 250,000 tourists a year. This motion presents us all with a gold-plated opportunity to position ourselves on the side of local small businesses, food producers, fishermen and women, and farmers, whilst also standing up for our residents' freedom of choice. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. Are there any amendments for this motion? Councillor Heaney.
You've got my amendment? Have you got the amendment?
Is it proposed by...
Yes, Lord Mayor, I want to propose an amendment to my name.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Steve Pitt.
It is, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Heaney, are you happy for that to be circulated while you speak? Thank you. You may now present your motion.
Oh, thank you, Lord Mayor. I mean, right, it's because I'm waving at you, I'm putting you off. Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a small change that we're putting in the amount. And I think a lot of what Councillor Swan said was really good. I mean, the idea of local producers. I mean, I've been using the farmers' markets in Southsea and Petersfield for many, many years. I sometimes go to Chichester, very keen to support local producers. And interestingly, when you go to these farmers' markets, you actually get to meet them and talk to them. And I've actually got to talk to a farmer who has a dairy farm just the other side of the New Forest. And I tell you, I've learned a hell of a lot about dairy farming by just having chats with him. It's been really, really interesting, actually. And he knows I'm involved in politics, so we have some interesting... We don't have political discussions, but we certainly get to talk about these other things. The importance of local food and the environmental implications of that are also very, very important. It's also important to remember that many, many farmers are more conscious now of the impact of their activities on the environment, and they are very keen that they're producing and so on should be as environmentally sustainable and friendly as possible. So I certainly think that there's a lot of merit in the motion. There's one area where I think we wanted to make some changes, and we're just looking at basically pushing the issue of choice. I mean, we think there should be choice available. The motion talks about having at the council organised event, always include meat and dairy. Well, actually, that may not be appropriate. If you are hosting an event, either for a cultural group or religious group that doesn't have meat or dairy, it's not really appropriate to have it there. So we shouldn't be saying that always it will be there. There also may be people or groups or organisations that we host that may have dietary issues or medical issues, which means they can't eat dairy. So we wouldn't want to host them with food that they couldn't possibly eat. It would be also probably a bit offensive and also a waste of money. So what we're really saying is that it's about choice. It's about enhancing choice. So I'm hoping that will clarify. I also wanted to add a bit about the Hampshire Farmers Markets, because Hampshire Farmers Markets do an awful lot to promote the producers. They produce a guide which gives you indication of where all these producers are and how to contact them. And also they promote the farmers markets in and around Hampshire, and they produce a food festival every year again, which people can go to. So it's a great way of doing it, and we should continue to support the work that they do. I did do a little bit of research around the motion, and I did notice that the Countryside Alliance had picked up on the motion and actually said something in their press release, which they put. They said the council is poised to become the fourth in a matter of weeks to defy the vegan trend. I wanted to make clear that we're not defying any vegan trend. We're not engaging in any sort of culture war issues around the countryside. We're actually about choice and about everyone having a choice, people being able to choose freely what they do. Interestingly, I happened to catch a couple of the programmes they had last week on Radio 4 between sort of 1:45 and 2. If I'm working at home, I'll often be listening to that. And they were about issues in the countryside. And it highlighted that we are getting into a situation where too often genuine differences and disagreements and maybe differences of view become I think the word is culture wars, and we should try and avoid that as far as possible. So I think the motion is really good, and I'm willing to support it. And I think the small amendment we've made will address some practical issues around how we should present food to possible organisations or individuals, and also make clear that we're not part of a battle against a vegan trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Next indicating I have Councillor Steve Pitt. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and echoing Graham's thoughts. My phone's nowhere near the microphone. Echoing Graham's thoughts, and also making it clear that this is about inclusivity and choice, and not about anything else. But I'm going to do a bit of an advert, because we, as you're probably aware, economic development side of things sits within my portfolio responsibilities. And last year, the economic development team organised a really good event called Eat the Island in the lead up to Southsea Food Festival, which is another great opportunity in the year for all local businesses to showcase what they do. One of the interesting things that came out of Eat the Island was a really thought-provoking presentation by a consultant in this area who said that when you go and chat to local restaurants, local bars, cafes, etc., people always say they're really proud of the stuff that they have available that is produced locally. But they don't always put it on the menu, and they don't always put that on their advertising. And yet, we know, all the evidence tells us, that when the customer is aware that that is what they're going to be enjoying, they feel better about the experience and they want to go there and support the business again. So it was a really useful bit of a learning curve to say to people, it's no good just being proud of what you've got on the menu. Tell people what it is and why you get it there. And we all know that there are certain places who you choose to put on the name of a certain Southsea butcher on their menus for that exact reason, because it's very popular. So it was a brilliant event, and we're going to do it again next year. It attracted over 70 businesses for the first event, and I'm actually doing a business-to-business event on Thursday this week, where we'll be asking people if they're happy with the same event next year, or whether they'd like us to hold it in a slightly different way to attract even more people. But a lot of the people that Councillor Swan mentioned were at that event, and that's about networking. It's about businesses understanding how they can get those products via each other and support that ecosystem. I'm very well aware that a former supplier of mine when I was in the licensed trade, Malcolm Irving, who ran Irving's Brewery in Portsmouth, very successfully for a very long time, has sadly had to cease trading this year. That's a reminder to us that if we don't support and shop with our local producers, that we won't have them anymore. So there's a really good sentiment behind this notice of motion, which we thoroughly support.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Nice tie, by the way. Councillor George Madgwick, do you have welcome? Do you have any declarations of interest?
You're about to say welcome. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry for being late. I guess, yes, I do have a slight interest in this motion, bearing in mind I'm a local restaurant owner, and I thank Councillor Swan for his opening remarks. I have been watching.
Thank you, Councillor Madgwick. Next indicating I have Councillor Bosher.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I was going to start by saying this motion does exactly what it says on the tin, but as you're talking about local produce, and I've got Councillor Swan glaring at my back, I probably won't. But I think this sort of follows and I appreciate what Councillor Heaney has said, but Portsmouth does tend to be a bit of a trailblazer when it does come to these sorts of things, because I go back far enough to remember, I think it was former Councillor Carolyn Lowndes introducing fair trade and making us a fair trade city. So Portsmouth does have a long history of being at the edge of the curve and going forward in actually bringing these sorts of things forward. I'm going to eulogise about a few of what's in Drayton and Farlington. George's Restaurant's already been mentioned in that respect. I think the pork I had was very nice, actually, but there you go. But we do have our own butchers, Tregarron Butchers, and certainly when it comes to Christmas, I'll be going off down to Hayling Farm Shop and getting my veggies for Christmas from there rather than the local supermarket, because they're so much better. And we also have a good history when it comes to actually, if you take it one step further, the allotment history, the waiting list for allotments, where people are keen to embrace that. We saw a sea change, I think, during the pandemic, where people were pushing away from local supermarkets and the if you like, the COVID threat that they perceived that they presented in favour of going for locally bought, locally produced produce. And certainly in Drayton and Farlington at that time, we had no businesses that shut up shop at all. The fruit and veg shop, they were actually doing fabulous trade, and to a certain degree, even though it's dampened down a bit, which is disappointing, it is still there. There are a couple of things, and Heather's just on her way out of the chain. Oh no, she's not. I can remember a Royal Navy dinner, and this perhaps demonstrates it very, very well. I can't remember who the Lord Mayor was. And it was to celebrate the Royal Navy. And you duly arrive, you go in and have your aperitif and whatever. I'll have a gin and tonic, please, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather says, we've got this fabulous local gin made by the Portsmouth Distillery. People are probably very familiar with the Portsmouth Distillery. Yes, I'll have one of those, please. Large glass with a bit of tonic in the top of it. And a lot of the Royal Navy guests that were there were like, I'll have some of that too. All sitting around sampling it and thinking, this is absolutely fabulous. And then there's an, oops, that wasn't gin, that was Portsmouth's white rum, which I now have a bottle of. But suffice to say, through Heather's mistake, we drank the bar dry of the Portsmouth white rum because it was such a fabulous drink. And I'd encourage anybody that has a soft spot for a tipple like that, try it. It's a local company producing something local, and it's, pardon my French, bloody fabulous, Lord Mayor. Just joking aside, I mean, we do have a keen fisherman in our ranks. If people remember former Councillor Scott Pater Harris. So with the Solent teaming with fish, it does benefit our group that Councillor Harris former Councillor Harris is uncontactable when he's actually out doing his all-night fishing bits and pieces, and to the benefit of others, no doubt, at the same time. I mean, I've made this very light-hearted. I appreciate that. But we can probably all eulogise about the local produce that we can actually get on our doorstep from local producers that doesn't necessarily necessitate trotting off down to Asda's or Sainsbury's or anywhere else like that and getting something that has been flown from the other side of the planet, frozen, packed in plastic, and off we jolly well go. And sometimes it requires a little bit of leadership, which I think this notice of motion provides, for us to take a step back and think, actually, what is on our doorstep? What is just down the road that is probably going to taste a damn sight nicer than something that's packed in plastic? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bosher. I enjoyed that. I have no one else indicating, so I will call upon the proposer, Councillor Swan, to sum up and to confirm whether he wishes to subsume the amendment. Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. More than happy to subsume the amendment. It strengthens the motion and, yeah, I have no problems with that whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh,
I haven't finished.
a dramatic pause.
A dramatic pause indeed. I just want to thank everybody for the positive collegiality on this motion, specifically thanking Councillors Pitt and Heaney for their kindness and patience over the past couple of days. I am passionate about British produce and farming, but we all should be. We all eat, and there is nothing in the world better than British produce, so let's shout that from the rooftops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. You'll have to excuse me. I'm not at my best today. I'm really sorry, Common members, but we're getting there. So a vote will now be taken, including the subsumed amendment. So all those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We'll move on to motion E. Is motion E, Chloe's motion, proposed by Councillor Kirsty Mellor and seconded by Councillor Cal Corkery? Councillor Mellor.
Formally proposed, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Corkery.
Seconded.
I now call upon the proposer, Councillor Kirsty Mellor, to present and speak to her motion. Councillor Mellor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This motion is a matter of profound importance that strikes at the heart of justice and the well-being of individuals in our society and our city. I've been supporting and working with Sharon Holland for some time now. Sharon contacted me to tell me about the death of her daughter Chloe and the circumstances around her death. Suicide by coercive control. I'd like to thank Sharon for her very powerful deputation and the work she is doing to raise awareness of domestic abuse suicide. Sharon is campaigning to change the law and has stood before us to advocate for a critical legal reform, the criminalisation of homicide by coercive control in the United Kingdom. Coercive control is a prevalent and dangerous form of abuse that goes beyond physical violence, leaving victims trapped in a web of manipulation, fear and dependency. It is an issue that our legal system has long overlooked, and it's high time we address the gap in our legislation. Homicide, the ultimate act of violence, should unequivocally be recognised as a criminal offence when it occurs within the context of coercive control. Firstly, let us understand the nature of coercive control. This form of abuse is not confined to physical harm. It extends into the realms of psychological, emotional, and financial control. Perpetrators use a variety of tactics to isolate and dominate their victims. The victims often find themselves unable to escape the clutches of their abuser, living in constant fear of the consequences if they attempt to break free. Coercive control is a silent epidemic that leaves wounds that cannot heal. When I was in my abusive relationship, I often found myself wishing for the visibility of a black eye or a broken bone. Something that would eventually heal. Sorry. The emotional scars, the invisible chains of control, endure far beyond the physical and etch themselves into the very fabric of who you are, becoming a silent narrative and a painful reminder of the past. While bruises disappear, the echoes of coercive control resonate forever. In the UK, the law has made some progress to recognise and address domestic abuse. However, the focus has predominantly been on physical violence, leaving the more subtle yet equally destructive aspects of coercive control in the shadows. When coercive control escalates to domestic suicide, our legal system must respond with the gravity and the severity that such horrific abuse deserves. One compelling reason for criminalising homicide by coercive control is the need for justice. It is a cold-hearted and calculated form of abuse designed to knock someone down until they lose who they are. By explicitly labelling homicide by coercive control as a criminal offence, we send a clear message that such actions will not be tolerated and justice will be pursued with full force. Furthermore, criminalising this form of homicide can act as a clear message to abusers that they will be held to account for their actions. It sends a strong signal that society recognises the severity of coercive control and is committed to punishing those responsible for the devastating consequences of such manipulative and destructive behaviour. Importantly, acknowledging homicide by coercive control as a criminal offence reflects a commitment to the well-being and the safety of survivors. It provides a legal framework that empowers victims, offering them the recognition and protection they deserve. It ensures that the law stands firmly on the side of those who have suffered immeasurable trauma, encouraging survivors to come forward, report abuse, and seek the justice they so rightfully deserve. In conclusion, the criminalisation of homicide by coercive control is the right thing to do, as well as a necessary amendment to the way our legal system deals with these kinds of cases. It is a step towards a more comprehensive and complex understanding of domestic abuse, one that recognises the profound impact of psychological and emotional manipulation on the lives of survivors. Let us be the voice for those who have been silenced, the advocates for justice in the face of coercion, and use our position to fight a legal system that stands on the side of victims and against those who commit such crimes. Together, let us advocate for a safer and more just society for all. Thank you. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mellor, for your bravery in sharing your own story there. You okay? I have no amendments before me. Are there any amendments from the floor? No. The matter is now before Council for debate. Councillor Winnington.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and thank you so much to Kirsty for bringing the motion and for the deputation we had earlier today, which was, as I'm sure everyone could feel, is very moving. I'm going to talk about, fortunately in my life I haven't experienced this or family members, but I have worked with, as a support worker, with people who have undergone this kind of abuse. And it's one of these things that we, as Councillor Mellor has said, often gets overlooked because people talk about domestic abuse as being physical. And though it can be physical, which can be used for coercive control, a lot of it can be very, very different. There can be all kinds of manipulation and things done to people, financial things, stopping people from seeing people, control over what you do on a day-to-day basis, watching things, anything. It can be something that just gets to you time and time again. And I've seen firsthand those effects on people, not just while that abuse is going on, but years and years later. And I think a really important point that's been brought out in this motion is that this kind of abuse can continue even after relationships have ended, because those people then use that to manipulate, and that can destroy relationships afterwards. So someone has come out of a abusive relationship, they're trying to move on with their lives, they're trying to create new relationships, and those are destroyed often by people who still go around and try to coercively control. And then of course there's those relationships with other people as well, because a lot of people, you have mutual friends when you were in a relationship, or as family members, because of course this can be other family members as well, and then that can really affect those things. So I completely back this, and and thank you so much again, Councillor Mellor, for sharing the petition. I'm very pleased to sign that, and I think I would encourage all members to do so as well. This is something that we need to get a handle on. But as I say, in the community as a whole, when we're talking about abuse, it so often is people just think about physical abuse. Physical abuse is an awful, terrible thing, but it isn't the only kind of abuse. And a lot of abuse is very different, but almost all abuse is coercive. And if we if we can support a way to recognise that the consequences of coercive abuse do lead to people taking their own lives because they see no other way out of what happens, then that will be a great thing, and it will be something that we can do. But also, let's bring it right back round as well. If people understand the consequences of them continuing to abuse people in this way, and that the consequences can be this, and that you can be saying this person abused this other person, and they then took their own life. Perhaps that might just be something that might stop someone abusing someone, that people who work with abusers to try and get them to understand what they're doing to someone else, that might work. Obviously, a lot of abusers will never admit to what they do, will never do anything like that. But for those who do work with them, who are successful, perhaps things like this would do that. So thanks so much for the motion. Thanks for the stories today. They are so moving and so impactful. And I fully support this motion. I'll fully support the petition as well.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. I have no further Councillor Corkery.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't take too long, as I think it's important that we kind of create enough time for everyone to have their say today. But it sounds like there's consensus on this issue, which is a good place to start. Firstly, I just wanted to start by paying tribute to the deputation given by Sharon Holland about her late daughter Chloe, and for all the campaigning work she is doing to get justice not only for Chloe but for all those victims, survivors and families of those subjected to domestic abuse. Secondly, I wanted to note the timing of this important motion that comes just a few weeks before the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, which serves as a poignant reminder of the ongoing struggle millions of women face daily. It is a call to action for all of us, irrespective of gender, to stand against the abuse of our sisters, mothers, daughters and friends. And as men, our voices can and must be used to contribute to breaking the silence surrounding this issue. Lastly, this motion and the speeches in favour of it make clear the need for legal change to ensure that justice is served wherever people lose their lives as a result of domestic abuse. By lobbying our Police and Crime Commissioner, MPs and Home Secretary, we can help lend our voices to this vital campaign, and I hope that you will all join us in supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corkery. So I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Kirsty Mallow, to sum up. Councillor Mallow.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Whittington, for your contribution and support for the motion. The petition link has gone round, and I have sent it to you all via email today, so please do sign it and share it with friends, family, with everybody on social media, etc. I won't take up too much more time, but the tragic reality of domestic suicide, exemplified by cases like Sharon Holland's daughter Chloe, underscores the urgent need for legal reform. Homicide by coercive control should be explicitly recognised as a criminal offence. Thank you.
Thank you again, Councillor Mallow. A vote will now be taken. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to motion F, last motion. Is motion F, FFT Pathfinder, proposed by Councillor Simon Bowshire and seconded by Councillor Lewis Gosling. Councillor Bowshire.
Formally proposed, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Gosling.
Seconded.
I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Simon Bowshire, to present and speak to his motion. Councillor Bowshire.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Families First for Children Pathfinder is a delivery mechanism for testing... Sorry? My apologies. I blame Councillor Lee Mason. He introduced the system, didn't he? The Families First for Children Pathfinder is a delivery mechanism for testing implementation of some of the most significant reforms to how children and families are supported and protected. The Pathfinder provides local areas with the opportunity to be at the heart of work to transform family help and children's social care. working together with central government to influence future reforms in the safeguarding partners, family help, children protection and family networks. The FFC Pathfinder programme was announced in February this year as part of the government's Children's Social Care Implementation Strategy, Stable Homes Built on Love, responding to recommendations from last year's independent review of the children's social care and reports into the murders of Arthur Labineo Hughes and Star Hobson in 2020. Dorset and Lincolnshire County Councils and Wolverhampton City Council were the first 3 local authorities to be selected to deliver the Families First for Children's programme in July of this year. Funded by £45 million collectively, the programmes will deliver the best models for the entire children's social care system that can be rolled out across the country. Previous Children's, Families and Wellbeing Minister Claire Coutinho said, "This programme they are running will inform future reform across England to give every child the best possible chance to grow up in their family, delivering on the Prime Minister's ambition to support families across the country." Louise Gittings, Labour councillor and chair of the Local Government Association Children and Young People's Board, welcomed the initiative, and the president of the Association of Director of Children's Services described the announcements as a positive step that will build on some of the great work already taking place across the country. Indeed, Chris Burden, the Labour Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Education at Wolverhampton, said, "We and our partners want to create a social care system which helps young people thrive and gives them the best possible start in life within the family." And he went on to say, "We are further delighted to have been asked to become a Families First for Children Pathfinder and to test a series of proposed reforms which should help bring about these improvements that we want to see." Lord Mayor, one of the requirements was that applications must be made by local authorities and countersigned by local statutory safeguarding partners, Police Force, Integrated Care Board. Portsmouth was encouraged to apply for Wave 2. However, the application period opened on Friday the 6th of October and subsequently closed at 11:59 p.m. on Monday the 6th of November. Portsmouth chose not to bid, originally citing capacity issues and then advising that they are of the view that this is not the right programme for PCC to apply for at this time. Lord Mayor, Portsmouth has third sector organisations such as the Roberts Centre, which provides support for children, families, young people and vulnerable adults from across Portsmouth and the surrounding area, who are keen to access this funding but are unable to apply directly. By deciding not to apply, Portsmouth City Council has effectively denied our third sector organisations the opportunity to welcome these funds. Lord Mayor, that sort of brings me on to the points that I've made in the summing up of my notice of motion, in so much that if we do have the ability to support third sector organisations, but the delivery vehicle has to be the local authority, that the City Council should do all it can to source that funding for them. It shouldn't make a unilateral decision that said, we don't think this is right. It should be working with those partners to access that money, and therefore I feel that going forward the City Council should at the very least support the third sector in applying for this funding, or at the very least provide a valid reason to the City Council as to why they are not prepared to do that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Boucher. Are there any amendments, Councillor Horton?
Yes, there is an amendment in my name.
And is that seconded by Councillor Whittington?
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor. To speak.
Councillor Horton, are you happy for that to be circulated while you present your amendment?
I'm happy, Lord Mayor. Thank you. So what this amendment tries to do is highlight some points of clarification and additional context which is needed in order for members to come to an informed decision, including that the deadline has already passed, and also a little bit of context about why, as has been alluded to, why we decided not to bid for that money. In the spirit of kind of a good debate, I do want to take the opportunity of discussing the good themes that actually Councillor Bosher, but also Rob New raised, particularly around the support of the third sector, and also particularly, as she has been mentioned, all the work that Carol Damper and the Roberts Centre do in the city. This is not any indication about a negative feeling about that. And I also noticed that Rob, in his deputation, mentioned a specific project that she wants to do, which is a RAISE project, which is a completely different thing. So I don't want the things to become conflated. So the Director of Children's Services makes decision on various bids as they arise, and the decision needs to be made in the context of how the focus of the bid relates to the work that we're already doing, whether we have the capacity, particularly senior leadership capacity, what are the timescales and the criteria of the bid, and also, importantly, particularly when other local authorities are cited as good examples, is about how it relates to our wider policies, our values and principles, and by we, I mean Portsmouth City Council, together with our many, many partners. So just to give a context to that decision making, here are some examples of central government bids we've been successful in during the last year. Family Hubs money, £3.2 million, where the contract was awarded to Home Start Portsmouth to roll out because the criteria of the bid allowed you to do that. Something called SENDAP, which stands for Special Educational Needs and Alternative Provision. We've got £5.4 million, where Portsmouth City Council are the lead local authority for 4 other local authorities for innovative work in this area. And lastly, just to mention the Youth Investment Fund, £1.1 million coming into Portsmouth, which is predominantly a capital bid where we're investing in physical spaces for young people, and we're actually working with the Hive around delivering the operation side of this. So returning to the bid in question, I was updated on the decision not to bid for this for about 6 weeks ago. I can't go into all of the details of it because it is a very complex thing, but I do want to pull out some things. I want you to know that scrutiny was occurred. I asked the questions about the model, and the model is very clear that it's about testing a particular model that the government want to implement around 4 strands that are highlighted in the strategy. It doesn't give for handing out money to local authority, third sector organisations. So I supported this executive decision. And I believe that our role is to seek advice from officers and support and challenge them, and I feel very confident that I did this. It's worth highlighting that the Director of Children's Services works within a very clear statutory framework, as I do in my lead member for Children's Services role, and I take this really seriously and would never support a decision where I did not believe it's in the best interests of families in the city. The clear ambition of the FFC Pathfinder is to test out a specific government model relating to that recent strategy highlighted. Given that we have just had an incredibly positive Ofsted outcome with an outstanding judgment for this particular strand of work, I was reliably reassured that bidding for this would not complement but very possibly distract from the current model of family safeguarding that we've just been praised about. Indeed, our family safeguarding model, I believe, if not was introduced under the previous Conservative administration, was definitely the groundwork was laid. I think Councillor Ryan Brent was Cabinet member at the time. So what the current administration did is continue to invest in this and other related areas. And also, earlier on, I just realised that the Children's Trust Plan has been mentioned as integral into what we do, and this is very much at the heart of our Children's Trust Plan. And that's because we believe in it. So I do have to raise the question of why chase money which could possibly jeopardise something that is so successful already. Lord Mayor, I urge Council to listen to these facts. I could make more politics about it, but I think people know my views that Children's Services is not the place for playground politics. Whilst money is obviously important, please, national, long-term, proper funding of these services in preference to short-term bidding is something that we all want. In this case, the context, the criteria and the timescale is not to the advantage of the Roberts Centre, who couldn't receive the money anyway. Of course, we will continue to value the work of the Roberts Centre, other organisations in the city, and absolutely will seek out opportunities to work with them, including issuing contracts. But in this particular instance, the programme, as it states, would not allow for that. I just want to make a final point, that whilst we're never complacent about what we're achieving here in Portsmouth, we are doing so much better than many other areas. As we're talking about money, the estimated cost of a failed Ofsted is upwards of £15 million to the council. And more crucially, would mean that commissioners come in, remove the control we have over our own destiny. Decisions like this one, to say no in an informed way, are a big part of our success. Please support the amendment which tidies up the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. The matter is now before Council for debate. Wow. Oh, I'm not surprised. Councillor Winnington.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And yes, well, as I say, I've obviously back up everything that Councillor Horton has said. And but just before I start, I'd just like to put my formal congratulations to Councillor Gerardo on the birth of her daughter on a very auspicious day. It was she's been born on what would have been my grandma's 105th birthday. My grandma, who I've mentioned before in this chamber 5 years ago actually, as she was born 2 days after the end of the First World War and then served as part of the Wrens in the Second World War. So it's a very well chosen date to give birth to a daughter. But absolutely. On this particular motion and the amendment, I just want to concentrate on obviously the work with the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Indeed, I can speak, and I alluded to in the last motion, about when I was working as a support worker, because of course I worked for the Roberts Centre for 3 years. And so therefore I know completely about the important work it does, and I look forward to working with them across the health and social care system in the future as Carol Damper retires, and then working through to their new chief executive into the future. But I think it really is one of those things, and I'm going to pick up the point that Susie made right at the end of her speech there. Long-term funding. Just this week, the National Audit Office has done a report on health and social care and said the one thing missing from health and social care, the one thing that would make the biggest difference is long-term funding, a long-term funding strategy. And it's something that's missing every year. Myself and Councillor Horton in a couple of weeks will be attending the National Children's and Adult Services Conference, where every time I've been, the chair of the Local Government Association does a speech. And in every speech, whoever that is, they say what we need is a long-term funding strategy for social care for both children's and adults. And it's one of these things when we get wheezes from the government, often very well-meaning, often things that do work in places, but it's a model that they want to promote and then they want you to bid for. That's not the way to do government. You can come up with good practice, you can come up with good things, but just to put something out there saying, we think this is the bee's knees, so you should bid for it, just doesn't work. Because what it does is it puts at risk things that are already there that work very well, like we have in Portsmouth. As Councillor Horton says, we're always looking for ways to improve. However, when you've just had an outstanding rating for a service, chucking it in the bin and just going after a load of money just because the government said this is our flavour of the month, when often a lot of our government ministers, it doesn't matter what party's in power, they don't know what really goes on at local authority level, and they certainly don't take any notice of what goes on with inspections, whether it be Ofsted for children's, or as we've got coming for adults, and we have in the wider sector, the Care Quality Commission. So this is one of these things that people can grasp onto, and it's almost the government say, we're doing something, because you can bid for a bit for scraps from the table. That's what I call it in health and social care. You bid for scraps. You don't get what you really need. You just get bits and pieces of funding that you can bid for. Sometimes, which aren't the best thing, or that, oh, bid for that and we'll give you a bit more money, but it replaces something that actually works quite well. But then the other side, if you don't do it, you're not going to have the extra funding. And so you're in this awful situation. So holding your nerve with a service that is very well regarded and works very well is actually sometimes very difficult. In Portsmouth, because over decades we have taken good decisions across all parties on this council, good decisions that gives us sound financial underpinnings, and in more recent years we've had good decisions that have kept us on a sound financial footing. We can make those kind of decisions. For other councils, they can't make those kind of decisions because they don't have the money to be able to do it. They will have to grasp for whatever's offered to them. Whether they've got a good service or not, it gives them extra money. So I fully support the amendment to this. I fully support our voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Indeed, I champion it, and I champion the work that we do. As the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board in Portsmouth, the co-chair, and also the cabinet member, and as part of Health and Care Portsmouth, we just included the Hive into there, which of course is our voluntary community and social enterprise sector lead organisation. And I look forward to us being able to work closer and closer on all sides in the health and social care sector, in both children and adults, into the future. But I completely agree with this amendment to this motion. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. That was almost exactly 6 minutes. Next to speak, I have Councillor Gerald Vernon-Jackson. Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The LGA's Children and Young People's Board has been mentioned, and I'm Deputy Chair of that board at the moment. So I just thought it's important to recognise that. I think my understanding and the informal feedback that I've got is that for people or authorities that have bid for this through Wave 1, there has been very mixed outcomes. I think probably mixed outcomes is a polite phraseology, and that the informal feedback from authorities is to say that this hasn't worked for them and to advise other councils not to pursue this. So I think one of the skills we've got, and actually working now in transport here in the council, is to work out when it's right to bid for external funding and when it's right not to bid. And you don't go after everything, because sometimes it's just not right for how things operate in your particular council. I think it's one of the things one of the bits of feedback I've had is that one of the real disappointments about this programme is that you can't put the money to the voluntary sector. So if we won this and bid for it, we couldn't give any money to Roberts Centre. The rules say you can't. That's one of the problems with this, and it seems to me that the amendment that Susie, Councillor Horton, has produced is a thoughtful way of progressing this, where we're actually trying to make sure that we bid for the stuff that works for us, not just bid for anything that happens to come down the road.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon-Jackson. Next to speak, we have Councillor Judith Smythe. Councillor Smythe.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd like to place this in a wider context. I would support the motion and I support the amendment. I understand some of the pragmatic decisions being made. But I just think we can't have this debate without recognising that local government as a whole has had between 60 and 75% of cuts in services, and that inevitably services that prevent things happening are being cut at a greater rate across the country than our statutory services that happen post hoc after a family has suffered, for example, a great deal, or after an old person has had a crisis. And we are in a parlous state. People may or may not know that before I became active in local politics and became a councillor, I was for 10 years on the government's programme, which was paid for by the Gordon Brown Labour government, to work into how we could best improve outcomes for children across the country. I was a director of the programme that helped local authorities to make better decisions on how to spend money. In other words, not to say, oh, we'll have 10 of these sessions, but to say what actually works to improve family lives. It was groundbreaking. And actually, we used Portsmouth and some work I'd done with the City Council here about outcomes as a basis for that work. So in other words, trying to cost out and evaluate what difference the work a local authority and its partners were doing to improve children's lives made, rather than did we have this number of sessions here, did we have that partnership working there, things that actually don't make a difference to children's lives. I'm proud of that work, but what has struck me since then is how the absence of a proper increase in core funding for local authorities to decide best how to spend their money is working out. And it's working out badly for outcomes for children. We tend to have much more now to work, even in a place that in Portsmouth that's working quite well, we tend to have to wait till a family gets to crisis rather than putting in work preventatively. And that's worse in some areas than in Portsmouth. So I just wanted to place in context, and I'm delighted this was raised today, because what happens is a lot of the preventative non-statutory work is done by the third sector. By that I mean the non-profit sector, the sector that's motivated by charitable or other social concerns rather than by for-profit concerns. The overall proportion of work that's given to for-profit making organisations for children's work across the country is greater now in relation to the not-for-profit sector than it ever was. And I put that down to, frankly, rather poor decision-making by local authorities about outsourcing and about criteria used. And I'm very, very worried about the future of the Roberts Centre, which has been a most splendid organisation to help do preventative work with some of the families in Portsmouth and slightly in the surrounding area that are on the verge of crisis, but who have actually been turned around by the excellent work of the Roberts Centre, Home Start and a number of other local voluntary organisations. And I just want to place on record, this isn't a little local tragedy, this is a national tragedy, and it is caused by the drastic cuts made by the David Cameron government and since then to the work of finances of local authorities that enabled us before to do a lot more preventative work than we're able to do as a nation than before. And this is a disaster. We must move towards having governments that understand the importance of preventative work with children, and we must recognise that this is solvable at a national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Next, indicating to speak, I have Councillor Matt Atkins. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm genuinely slightly disturbed and curious about this motion. And I haven't done the detailed work on it myself. I pay respect to Councillor Bosher and Councillor Gosling who have and explained this to us in our group meeting. My understanding of this is, and I'm quite happy to be corrected if this is not the case, is yes, the council service is working well, and the council didn't feel that this funding would benefit its service or its way of doing things, but the Roberts Centre did. And the Roberts Centre wanted this application made in order for it to receive the funding to trial this. And I just cannot understand why it was a problem for the council, why it was, why it would harm the council to have assisted the Roberts Centre in this matter. It seems so much like, well, we're all very well. You can go whistle, as we're quite happy with our position. We're not interested in putting the work into this, and I just can't understand why. Even given you say that we talk about this background funding crisis, why we wouldn't have applied for this pot of funding? I can't understand the rationale.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I believe Councillor Horton has a Point of order, under what standing order number?
39B, I've never done this before. So excited. I'm not too sure whether you heard some of the things that were being said. You couldn't, oh, didn't hear my speech. Sorry, in which case, I didn't realise you weren't in the room. But a few other people have highlighted it as well. And actually, even in the unamended notice of motion, it says that the Roberts Centre can't apply for it. So it can't apply. And also, it can't be passported on.
Through the Lord Mayor, please, members.
Sorry, Lord Mayor. Thank you for correcting me. So I think we've made it clear, both in the speeches, but also partly in this notice of motion, but also clarification that actually this particular bid doesn't allow the local authority to do anything other than deal with the 4 strands of the implementation, which it has to manage and run itself. It cannot be passported on to another organisation to deliver it. That's not always the case for all bids.
Thank you for clarifying, Councillor Horton. I will now call upon the proposer, Councillor Simon Bosher, to sum up and to confirm whether he wishes to subsume the amendments. Councillor Bosher.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I just had a gut feeling that this would probably be the notice of motion that was spoken about the longest. On balance, I am going to accept the amendment, but I'd like to correct a few things if I can, and I'll start with Councillor Smythe, who started off. Councillor Smythe's history only seems to start from 2010. Some of us go back a year before that with Liam Byrne saying, sorry, there's no money left, Councillor Smythe. So, yeah, I think you need to roll back a little bit
Through
further
the Lord Mayor,
with
please.
your history. My apologies, Lord Mayor, sorry. But I think Councillor Horton's actually slightly got that right. Didn't say that the Roberts Centre can't have the money. They can't apply for it directly. It has to come through the local authority. And actually, there is a sort of a wider thing here in what we're looking at, because this council regularly puts down notice of motion on a variety of subjects that says write to an MP and get an MP to do it. But actually all this came from Penny Mordaunt working with Carol Damper and the ministers, because Carol identified the funding as being a good opportunity for the Roberts Centre to broaden out the work that they could actually do. Indeed, in the middle of the email trail I've seen, there's the leader of the City Council looking to see whether he could facilitate this to make this actually happen. But the decision was not that we couldn't make it happen. The RAISE programme was identified in those emails as an ideal opportunity to try and actually develop this, but the officers of the City Council decided it wasn't in their interest to do this at this time. And the point that I'm trying to get across with all this is the fact that where there's a third sector opportunity, we should be seeking to facilitate that and make that happen if it is humanly possible. And we should...
Members.
And there should be a rationale behind it that is explained to the City Council. As it is, there hasn't really been a rationale behind this, and this window of opportunity has been lost, which is the thing that I've been seeking to identify. So potentially the losers in this, irrespective of all the politics that Councillor Smythe wants to play, is the fact that someone like the Roberts Centre has actually lost out on the potential to actually support families with their children staying at home. Lord Mayor, I will accept that, because it still does identify the fact that the council did not put in a bid, and it also identifies the fact that they will actually come back with an explanation as to why it happens, and I hope the council will actually support this notice of motion as amended, and perhaps we should learn lessons from the fact that it's not all about us, it's about the third sector as well, and if we can deliver funding for them, that's what we should do. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bosher. So a vote will now be taken, including the subsumed amendments. So all those in favour? Any against? Anyone abstaining? One. Thanks. The motion is carried. I'll now move to the final agenda item. Item 9, questions from members under Standing Order 17. Members, no questions have been received under the provisions of this standing order. Therefore, that concludes today's council meeting, and I now close this meeting at 16:20. And can I lastly just all invite you back to the Lord Mayor's Parlour for some Councillor Bosher endorsed refreshments. Thank you, members.